On the show today, we have guest Carolyn McKanders. Carolyn's background includes 20 years in the Detroit Public Schools as a teacher, counselor, program administrator, and staff development specialist. Presently, she presents seminars internationally on developing adaptive schools and organizations, cognitive coaching, enhancing presentation effectiveness, meeting facilitation skills, and honoring equity, inclusion, and diverse voices. Carolyn is excited to announce the publication of their new book, It's Your Turn: Teachers as Facilitators. This work provides teachers, leaders, and others with robust mental models and practical tools for conducting productive, collaborative meetings. Get ready for an exciting episode.
I'm educational justice coach Lindsay Lyons, and here on the Time for Teachership podcast, we learn how to inspire educational innovation for racial and gender justice, design curricula grounded in student voice, and build capacity for shared leadership. I'm a former teacher leader turned instructional coach. I'm striving to live a life full of learning, running, baking, traveling, and parenting because we can be rockstar educators and be full human beings. If you're a principal, assistant superintendent, curriculum director, instructional coach, or teacher who enjoys nerding out about co-created curriculum with students, I made this show for you. Here we go. Carolyn McKanders, welcome to the Time for Teachership podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited.
Me too. I am so excited because I just read your book, It's Your Turn: Teachers as Facilitators, and I absolutely loved it. And so really excited to dive in to the concepts, to just a few chapters, maybe as a deep dive. And I'd love to know, what's important for listeners to know either about the book or you to kind of frame the conversation today.
First, I'm a teacher at heart. I was born a teacher and I'll always be a teacher. And so I spent 28 years in Detroit Public Schools as a teacher, counselor, staff development person, still teaching. And now I'm an international presenter and working with my favorite mentor, Robert Garmston. And this book came about because we listen to teachers. Teachers are put into leadership positions and often are not given what they need to interact with their peers. They do this tension, they have this dance where they have to be peers or stay connected to their peers, while at the same time taking on leadership positions. And we interviewed over 400 teacher leaders and their supervisors in diverse US schools and international schools, and they told us what they needed. And so we answered that call and responded to that data by putting together the teachers as facilitators. But most books around facilitation are filled with mostly tools and strategies. Our take on this was to start with internally with people's mindsets and principles, because principles guide behavioral choices. And so we even have quotations from teachers in the book. And what we found is that everybody needs this. We started with teachers, and yet anyone who facilitates meetings and support collaboration from diverse voices can use the book.
I love that. I'm going to jump on top of that to add one more layer too. I was reading it too as a former teacher to be like, oh, this actually could work if you're facilitating kind of a class discussion of students as well.
Absolutely, positively. In our workshop, we always say, listen, because the students are my heart, really. That's why I'm still doing this. Listen for um, ways to use this in your classroom with students. In fact, we actually unpack that because this book is highly relational and teaching students is highly relational, and the quality of the relationship between the teacher and students directly mediates learning. And so we actually lift that too. So yes, the book, um, because it's about mindsets and principles, the application of these can be contextualized for classrooms, for adult meetings, for student to student meetings, for it could be principal meetings too, principal staff meetings. So the work is highly adaptable.
Amazing. I love that so much because yeah, anyone can pick it up and use it and put it to work immediately. And so I think now, like taking a little bit of a step back, one of the first things I like to ask guests is kind of in line with this idea of freedom dreaming, which Dr. Bettina Love describes as dreams grounded in the critique of injustice. Just such great language. What is the big dream that you hold for education, either through the lens of the book or just in general?
Boy, that when you say that, it kind of grabs me. And honestly, I feel a little emotional about that because I do have big dreams for education right now. Given the context of our world, um, who we are as educators to these kids really, really matters right now. My dream is that we continue to honor the diverse ways people show up in this world. It because you can't teach without that. So my hope is that we actually love each other and love the students. I actually teach self-love too. And I just hope that we pay attention to who each individual is and honor that moment to moment to moment in teaching and in learning and engaging with each other as educators.
Thank you for that. And I think specifically the chapters that I was really interested in are specifically about kind of that. I think like being able to think about polarities and differences of opinion and right. So I'm really excited to get into all of this. I am curious. I also like to start kind of soon in the thread of conversations on the podcast with mindset because I think sometimes there's like a mindset shift that can just unlock a lot of the practical strategy pieces. And so I'm curious, are there any kind of mindset shifts that you have seen unlock kind of the way teachers facilitate or that you would coach teachers to embrace as they become facilitators that have been helpful?
A mindset shift from um, technical to adaptive is a huge mindset shift in terms of working with people that we've seen. People focus on planning the meeting and here are the steps that we will matriculate in this meeting. Here are the topics that we will matriculate in this meeting when meetings are really more about the complex adaptive system that you're immersed in that's based on quality relationships. And that's been a huge shift, mindset shift. It's like, oh, we're not telling you not to plan and not to be ready. What we're saying is that the most important um, thing in the room is energy. And the most important way to create that updraft of energy is through relationships, quality relationships in the meeting. So that's a huge shift that we're seeing in the work. Also, the presumption that people's behaviors are their best attempts to take care of themselves. They don't have it in or out for you. They're trying to take care of themselves. And another shift is that people can be understood by somatically, that is through their body language and reading not just words, but taking them in holistically to interact with them uh, and the presumption of positive intent. So those are big shifts.
Absolutely. I remember highlighting like multiple times in the book this idea that behaviors are our best attempts to take care of ourselves. I love that. I never heard someone put it in that language. That's so rings so true. And I also think, I mean, from a parenting and teaching lens too, like, I mean, you could see this so often in children. It's just like, oh yes, that's exactly what that behavior was.
Yes, and understanding that uh, keeps the teacher's resourcefulness, keeps the facilitator's resourcefulness, and gives grace to students, and it gives grace to adults also. And and it supports the teacher and the facilitator of a meeting in structuring that lesson, structuring that interaction, structuring that meeting in ways that support people in choosing productive behaviors to take care of themselves. Since what we're seeing is always that dance of I need to make sure I'm safe. I need to make sure I'm connected. I need to make sure I'm loved. I need to make sure my interests are being handled well. And so how the teacher structures the interactions, how a facilitator structures the interactions can support productive choices and taking care of oneself.
That makes total sense because I've seen people kind of reel at the idea of like a discussion norm similar kind of to this, but not quite hitting at the same thing. That is, assume best intentions. I think you had said language similar to that earlier, and kind of with the context of as a person with particular identities in a society that is very oppressive, it's hard to come into that space. And so what I'm hearing from you is kind of like we kind of honor that we give people grace and we don't let like negative behaviors or harmful behaviors like fester and continue. We actually structure it in a way that is productive while giving everyone grace. Is that right?
Absolutely. And the presumption of positive intent is one of the most misunderstood principles on earth right now. Especially if your lived experience um, has been one of oppression. It's we come there suspicious. And so because of our lived experiences, the presumption of positive intent doesn't mean that people are right. It means that people walk in as much light as they have in the moment, and it's our job to bring light and not throw shade. And so, the presumption of positive intent says that people are doing the best that they can in that moment, and that they have the capacity um, when mediated in productive ways to even do better than they are now. And the presumption of positive intent is really for the person who is doing that act. It keeps you curious and not furious, is what I say, and that curiosity sparks inquiry. It sparks you to say, to stay away from heavy judgment and to start to say, I'm wondering how that person got to that position. Um, what took them to that particular opinion or action? And so you become more of an inquirer and using empathic language and empathic response patterns. So it makes you more productive, grounded, and able to navigate these natural tensions that are just there in human systems.
Absolutely. Okay, there's so much I'm writing down right now. This is really good. It reminds me a lot of chapters 4 and 5 of your book. So I'm just reading the chapter titles here, but diversity enriches, inclusion makes groups smarter. And then chapter 5, never let a conflict go to waste, liberate opportunities. I really I was just really excited about this. And I think they kind of speak to some of the tensions you were mentioning and kind of the facilitator
moves and skills and kind of mindsets that you need to be effective in those situations. Is there anything from those chapters specifically that you want to lift up for us?
Sure. First, I want to say that the book builds to those chapters. And the first chapter or mindset is see a group as it could be and to have a growth-oriented attitude, perspective, mindset for a group. That means you can take them from where they are, you accept where they are, knowing that through grace and through skills, mental dispositions, and they can be um, taught, they can learn, they can develop over time, and which is needed for the last two chapters. That and then um, groups grant consent is another mindset. Your role or position does not grant you consent to lead. You have to get that consent um, through credibility and relationships. And that is needed for those last two chapters. And plan, don't attach is a third mindset, and which says you have to be ready to be flexible and use improvisation with groups. So you want to take those and then go to diversity enriches. What we found over and over in the research that groups that think alike, that have homogeneous backgrounds, and so on and so forth, they make very bland decisions. And groups often resort to apathy in those groups because there's just too much agreement. And so what we found is that when facilitators, leaders can harvest the diverse voices and create a psychologically safe container for those um, group members actually enjoy meetings better. The depth of the conversation and the meaningfulness of the conversation increases exponentially. Um, Decisions that are made are more innovative, and more people actually implement those decisions. And now the thing is, how do you harness all the power of the diverse voices within a group? One is to know that diversity is, period. It just is, period. And so you're either honoring it or you're not, because it's always there. So starting from that, like you're not doing a special favor by noticing it. It's just there. And what are you going to do with it? And then all of chapters one, two, three, and four are necessary for using conflict as a resource, definitely, because there are natural tensions in all social systems. Either we ignore them and be vulnerable to them, or we find ways, tools, mental dispositions, agreements, talking structures to honor them and navigate them so that um, in this case, that we're doing our best for students.
Thank you so much for that overview and the reminder that, right, it's building. You don't just jump right to the forward, but you don't just dive into conflict, right? You've built all of these things first. I think that was really important. Thank you for naming that. And then I really liked two particular tools that you specifically named in the book that could support these paraphrasing and polarity mapping. Do you
Mhm.
want to talk about either one or both of those to give people a sense of, what does that even look like or feel like?
Hi, this is Leah popping in to share the free resource for this episode, Staying Engaged in Difficult Conversations script. You can find it at the blog post for this episode, www.lindsaybethlyons.com/221. Now back to the show.
That's so funny that you pick those. People who know me would say that I would pick those. In fact, in fact, I'm known for saying, when in doubt, paraphrase your butt off. I'm known for saying that all over the world, um, because there are polarities. And so let's take a look at, why does Carolyn always saying paraphrase your butt off all the time? Um, One, it takes care. Well, when I say paraphrasing, I don't mean paraphrasing. I mean really taking in someone holistically. See, first, it's not just repeating back what somebody says, it's taking in them cognitively, socially, emotionally, spiritually, um, taking in and asking yourself, who is this person and what is it that they are really meaning? What are their values? What are their beliefs that they're expressing? What are their mental models? What are they bringing right now to the table? And then honoring that by seeking to understand. So it's setting aside yourself for the moment. That, to me, in my opinion, this is truly servant leadership. When you set yourself aside and you take someone in holistically that way and honor them, and the space between you is honored also by seeking to understand values, beliefs, the identity that they're bringing, their lived experiences that are poured into this one sentence that they've said to you, or that's poured into this rant that they've just done. And it actually is the number one relationship building tool, professionally and personally, when you provide that service. And so, um, paraphrasing reflects back to a person their emotions, if they're highly emotional, and the content around which they are emotional. It also creates clarity of communication between people. It also, what I just love, we call it an Aikido move. It goes with the energy instead of pushing against a force. It actually helps the brain to settle down, the personality self to settle down. And when it feels that it's being heard, and it's hard to push against understanding. When people feel understood, what we found, it actually changes their brain chemistry, so that um, the serotonin level goes up, and they actually start to just relax. And it's the number one trusting behavior that you can do with another person, not talking, but listening. And so we found that three kinds of paraphrases are really important, especially when working with um, all groups. I don't even want to say diverse groups, because there's just as much diversity present if everybody looks like you or sounds like you or whatever. But the common ground paraphrase is so useful for navigating diverse perspectives, when navigating conflict or tensions in groups. The common ground paraphrase um, listens across diverse perspectives, reaches in, grabs out a common value, a common belief, a common identity, a common goal, and offers it to the group so that they can coalesce, be coherent, and move forward together. And then there is the polarity paraphrase, which is one of my most favorite paraphrases. It normalizes tensions that are within a group. And it says, you're right, and you're right too. Guess what? And we need each other because polarities are two or more right answers that are interdependent, which means you can't put one down if you expect a positive outcome. So both the answers are needed for positive outcomes. Now, and there are tensions between them, like um, paying attention to work and paying attention to home. You have to pay attention to both to have a good outcome, which is a balanced life. You can't put one down without the whole thing collapsing. And so and so offering groups lifting a polarity paraphrase normalizes the tensions. Also, it honors diverse voices because it says, um, for example, some people feel that students should be told the line and follow all the rules, whereas some people feel that students need to be given the opportunity to make decisions and to practice choice making and to be given grace in those areas. Well, to if you're facilitating a contentious conversation like that, you can reach inside and you can lift polarities and say, so um, there's a natural tension occurring here between having students follow guidelines while at the same time honoring their need for freedom and flexibility. And so it scoops that up, and then you name a higher purpose so that our students are successful in life, so that our students um, are able to navigate schooling better. And so effective facilitators, especially these days when we're highly polarized, it's a non-negotiable paraphrase to be able to listen for that and grab a couple of polarities and present them to the group. The other paraphrase is the acknowledging paraphrase. Everybody wants to be acknowledged. They want their emotions to be acknowledged. Now, here's the skill with this kind of paraphrase. You can, you must know how to paraphrase without taking people to hell. I always say you've got to be able to paraphrase emotions and content while keeping the resourcefulness of the person or the group. So your paraphrase uh, should light a pathway when you're honoring feelings. And I'll give an example. Um, I might say to a group, you know, it's really frustrating um, when the parents that we expect to come to our meetings are not there, and where that frustration comes from wanting to build a team with parents. And then to get the group to say yes, because there's a pathway within that. You're honoring and acknowledging and creating a pathway for positive action. Those are the best paraphrases, not just, yeah, all the parents just get on our nerves because I don't know what they're doing. They're not showing up, which I call the hell paraphrase.
That is so helpful. I could easily see how just that one phrase just directs to a very different conversation to be able to to bring them into that lighting a pathway, as you said. Brilliant. I really appreciate just naming all of those types of polarities, and I'm actively thinking about how, again, back to the beginning, we were talking about how anyone could use this. So a teacher facilitating a group of teachers, I could easily think of a bunch of examples of like teacher team meetings where these moves could be used. I'm also envisioning in a class conversation, right? If there's a student who's actually quite good at listening, but is often undervalued because they're not maybe speaking 100 times like the other, maybe a couple other kids, to be able to jump in as a student and be like, here's what I'm hearing. There's this tension happening. That would be just like a next level move that most teachers would just like fall over with excitement about. Really
Yeah,
cool.
that is so true to teach students that listening is often more valuable than talking. And then when you talk based on listening, the talk is going to be a higher quality talk and can be a paraphrase, which liberates resourcefulness within your colleagues or your students or your friends to to say, you all are talking about the same thing. You're really valuing um, um, the where we take our trips at the end of the school year, even though we've been all over the place, but there's this big value of the the location seems to be the biggest value that we have. That if when a student does that, they've liberated the whole group from just being all over the place. And so, yes, and we know places and spaces, many in the country and not in internationally, where teachers have introduced paraphrasing or listening to understand, and it's often in conflict resolution. And I invite teachers to use it more than in conflict resolution, but to teach this skill as a teaching learning skill. Also for students, boy, they can really help teach a lesson if they paraphrase the concepts and the ideas that are in that lesson. And so you can be and what you can paraphrase, you have learned it more deeply. And so we know spaces where there's lots of paraphrasing or listening to understand going on in classrooms and also going on in adult meetings. It has to be taught, though. It has to be, and teaching involves giving foundational information and then modeling and practice. It's a not only a commitment and it's a skill that needs to be taught and practiced. We know elementary school students who can listen to understand. Kids, I just love kids because um, they're so open. They are so open and they're just waiting to be introduced to these ways of being a more resourceful human. And so, absolutely, positively, teaching our children to listen to understand. Also, also a counselor, and I teach people to paraphrase themselves. Um, Listening to yourself to understand yourself. So to say to yourself, I used to counsel in middle school, which is so needed because sometimes they don't know what they mean, but helping them to paraphrase themselves to say, if you were going to talk to yourself now about the most important thing for you, what would you say to yourself? You know, or you just said da 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 da. Um, Reach down in there and pull out a goal for yourself. And really it's about teaching them to say, well, I just said this, and a goal for me is da 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 da. They just paraphrase themselves. They sought to understand, which is really cool. So I want to encourage counselors, school counselors, um, to bring that into their practices And never let a kid leave a counseling session without paraphrasing. You paraphrase them and have the student paraphrase themselves. What are you leaving with? Which is the organizing paraphrase that can be used. Um, Paraphrasing is at the top of a facilitator's toolkit for as especially for chapter mindsets 4 and 5, which is crafting a container of psychological safety so that people know that their voice is valued and there won't be any put downs. And also seeking to understand a working agreement within a group. And so I was in a group in Detroit where there were 12 precocious consultants, and we all thought we had the right answer. And we probably did with polarities, but we didn't know better at that time. And yet we decided that we would make listening to understand as one of our working agreements. And we used to call it malpractice to throw out an idea before seeking to understand. And so um, when someone speaks, to understand them before throwing out an idea. So the paraphrase gives you permission to do three things in a meeting we teach. Once the person gives you sign off, I paraphrase and say, so a value that you hold is student self-management. And then you wait and the person gives you sign off. They'll go like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Then they might go on another run. And you paraphrase that too. And then you have permission to one, add your idea at that time, or pose an invitational question, one that's non-threatening, but an invitational question, or invite the engagement of others within the group. And so paraphrasing within the group is a foundational point for uh, collaborative dialogue. You cannot have collaborative dialogue without the foundational skill and willingness to listen to understand.
This is incredible. I'm looking at time and realizing we don't have much more. So I'm going to move to kind of close out. I could talk to you all day about this. This is fascinating. Um, this is kind of the next three questions are kind of a quick lightning round, if you will. One of them is just kind of recognizing that we talked about a lot of big things, like big ideas, and also a lot of practical things people could do in a meeting, right? What's one thing that people can do once they kind of end the episode to put into practice right away? That might be one of those kind of foundational pieces to work up to, the fourth and fifth mindset.
Yeah, talking to people who facilitate their peers. Here are 5 things you can do. I call them the elemento, like little kids say elemento. If you want to improve your meetings, do elemento. One is an audience connect, to greet people and to thank people. Um, Two, have a clear purpose and have it visual. Write it out. Adults are visual. Um, Three, have a public agenda. That means an agenda that everybody can see, not just a flat agenda, but one you can point away from yourself and point to. Have a public agenda, have an inclusion strategy. We used to call those icebreakers, but if you want to make adults mad right away, tell them they're going to do an icebreaker. So just throw that out, but have an inclusion strategy of some kind that brings people's voices in the room. And it could be 60-second inclusion strategy. Name one thing you're celebrating, or looking at today's purpose, what's one hope that you have, and then share that out. Having an inclusion strategy, have visible working agreements. Your meeting is not psychologically safe, and people can't be brave without visible working agreements. So I want to throw that out as your elemental. Make sure you have those in place. Also, um, the presumption of positive intent, because it keeps you resourceful. Also, paraphrase your butt off. Those would be the things that I would leave for a facilitator. And another one is lighten up and have fun. Lighten up. You want meetings where people are laughing and people are full of joy as they do the work. And so, um, relationship first, rigor secondly.
I love that. The next question is for fun. It could be work related or it could be not work related. But what is something you personally have been learning about lately?
Oh my gosh. I have been learning about um, self-love. It is so foundational until I'm doing a retreat on that for leaders because you cannot lead well if you think you're broken. And um, and so how do you know that you are whole? It doesn't mean that you don't have things to learn, and yet you come at it from a space of, I'm not broken, I'm whole. And what's there not to love about me? And so, and which means that I won't get depleted because I live from the overflow. I fill up with love for myself and I spill over into the world. And so I've been learning a lot about grace, self love, and wholeness.
That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Lastly, I think people are going to want to get your book. So we're going to link to that in the show notes and the blog post. Also, people are probably going to want to either follow you or connect with you, learn more about you. Where can they do that online?
Yeah, we are on LinkedIn. Tell them just to look for teachers as facilitators at LinkedIn. And I have a very, very astute group who just keeps that going for us. And look for us and follow us that way too. Also, to if they read the book, to give us a book review also on Solution Tree and on Amazon to give us a book review. Also, our website is teachersasfacilitators.com. It's the name of the book, teachersasfacilitators.com. And you can follow what we're doing on there too. And there are links to our social media on on our website.
Amazing. Carolyn, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. And I send out lots of love to all the educators all over the world. Um, I have a friend who says anybody who's not us, too bad for them. We are, we are the world. We really are as educators. And I want to leave people with you are enough. You really are enough. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
If you like this episode, I bet you'll be just as jazzed as I am about my coaching program for increasing student-led discussions in your school. Shane Safir and Jamila Dugan talk about a pedagogy of student voice in their book Street Data. They say students should be talking for 75% of class time. Do students in your school talk for 75% of each class period? I would love for you to walk into any classroom in your community and see this in action. If you're smiling to yourself as you listen right now, grab 20 minutes on my calendar to brainstorm how I can help you make this big dream a reality. I'll help you build a comprehensive plan from full-day trainings and discussion protocols like Circle and Socratic Seminar to follow-up classroom visits where I can plan, witness, and debrief discussion-based lessons with your teachers. Sign up for a nerdy, no-strings-attached brainstorm call at lindsaybethlyons.com/contact. Until next time, leaders, think big, act brave, and be your best self.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.